We got Chris Fat Mario Rubio and myself, Joe Wagner. Pretty boring.
Yeah.
But we got, more importantly, our special guest, star of Broadway,
Alan Mingo Jr.
So from The Wiz, from Kinky Boots, man, you got a resume, and you're sharing a lot of your life experience with us on this podcast, telling us about how you survived COVID and being in jail on a cruise ship, pretty much. I'm just going to leave that one open-ended because that one sounds way juicy when you put it like that.
Learning Italian, just like that, really quick. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, we get into some HR stuff. You know how this goes. There's some tangents.
Yeah.
Conveniently not tell me about a wine pairing with some foods that I would not normally eat.
We got tipped off by a friend that
I see.
That you maybe look at some of the odd foods of the world and you're like, not my thing. So we tried to break that barrier down.
That you did. That
Yeah.
you did.
Can I say? I mean, it was good. Yeah.
I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
Please do it.
Got it.
I love like Chinese food, but so we were also doing business there, and apparently they're starting to sell some wine in these places. So like I'm like, cool, great, getting like, I mean, you're talking like first generation immigrants that are like getting into American wine,
Getting away from the sake and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still drinking the hell out of shoju and stuff. Like they got that stuff floor stacked. So, but no, so the place in Lower Manhattan we went to, so they bring out like the live seafood. They don't bring out like a live chicken or anything, but like they'll bring out the live seafood. So like we had this crab like crawling on the table.
Yeah,
and then
I don't want to see it.
I had to hold it up. No one. Okay.
Before you cooked it?
Okay. I didn't know.
Before it got cooked and then served 3 different ways.
No.
I mean, the
They
food
did
was
not tell me
great.
that's what was going to happen to that one. I made friends with it. His name was Billy.
This is my point.
His
But see,
name- we did name him.
You're a farmer. Yes?
Yeah, but that hurt too because I got close. Like when I first started getting into the farming thing, when I was raising pigs.
Yes.
My dad was not. He was not clear on that. He said, you sell the pigs. The people can do whatever they want them. Sometimes they take them to farms and they let them just run wild, and you're like, okay, cool. Until Napa Valley is pretty small, until you get invited over for dinner at someone's house.
And there's pet.
And they serve you your animal, don't tell you about it until after. And then they ask you, did Wilbur taste good?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, they come back to you with...
It was,
So-
I'm telling you, this was a very traumatic experience.
So
Like,
I
what
got-
we're talking about right now.
I got a great story like this because this is my dad, like to a T,
Yeah.
how he does this stuff.
That
And
was-
so when I was growing up, we had goats, like pet goats.
Yes.
Like, I remember we had like blackback and floppy ears, like these are their names. And like my
Yes.
brother and I treated them like pets.
Yes.
And they were like super sweet. And my dad, so at our house, we had oleander plants. You familiar with oleanders? I don't know if they grow in New York, but
They
they're
do, but go ahead.
so they're all over here in California, and they're known to be poisonous if you ingest them. And so my dad would tell us like, don't eat, like we're gonna go eat leaves anyways, but like don't ever eat those plants because they're poisonous. So what he does is he slaughters the goats, not at the same time, different times, and every time he slaughters one, we're eating goat, but we don't know we're eating goat. But he tells us on top of it that they died because they ate the oleanders.
Oh, floppy ears.
Floppy
Just
ears
got-
ate oleanders, and now he so he doubled down on like, I'm gonna teach these kids a lesson.
That's...
They're gonna know not to eat oleanders because that animal I just slaughtered.
But aren't you killing yourself?
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna pop open a bottle of wine here. We are gonna do a little food and wine pairing in a little bit on this podcast.
I'm excited.
All right, but hey, I think we should do a little intro here.
Yes, please.
All right, welcome to Go With Your Palate, a good cold open. I'm Joe Wagner, got my co-host here, Chris Fat Mario Rubio. We got a special guest today, Alan Mingo Jr. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can't wait to get into the origin story, how you got to where you're at. So would you classify yourself as a superstar on Broadway?
Oh, hell no. Can I say hell?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Please cuss away.
You can say whatever the fuck you want.
I think
Be free, my friend. Be free.
Okay. I consider myself one of those actors who you may know their projects, but you may not know who they are. I pride myself in sort of having a long career doing what I love. And when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, where do we want to start?
Superstar, no.
Superstar?
Superstar, no.
Okay, but how many lead roles have you played in theater, if you were to ballpark it?
All of them.
All of them? Okay.
Yeah.
Even when I didn't start out, even when I started out in the ensemble, I wound up getting the principal role. And there were times doing principal roles that I said, you know what, for this project, like for instance, The Little Mermaid, I specifically went into the ensemble on purpose, knowing I was understudying a friend, and I also knew I was going to get the role, if that makes sense. So it's just like, well, now I don't have to bust my body up. I can just... Matter of fact, the actors who I would work with would get mad that my track, we call them tracks, your sort of performance, what you do in a show. My track was so light. I would sing the opening number. I would sing the number before intermission. And then I would go upstairs, get dressed to sing the final number. So you're paying me to sit and wait for Sebastian to go down, and I have to sing 3 songs in a whole show? So for those times, I will take a job like that. But eventually, I wound up getting the job. And so I may take a job in the ensemble for that very reason.
Well, that sounds like wisdom to me, right? That's like,
Yeah.
that's instead of just like trying to, work your ass off, knowing you got the talent and going for the big role, you come in kind of underscored.
Correct.
Knowing that you got the
yes.
talent and you don't need to waste all that time and effort
Correct.
to get it. Yeah.
You have to tell actors who are creating a Broadway show, normally the director will say, or the choreographer will say, you know what, I'm doing Under the Sea. I need 4 dancers in the front, and people just go running. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need 3 actors over here, and the singer I need over here. And they're going and running, and I would go, I think I need to go to the bathroom. I need some water. And I would leave the room. I come back, and it's all set. But I knew what I was doing in that time. I just had 3 shows back to back to back. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking this to chill out. I'm not Sebastian now. I know I will be. Let me just sit down and be the understudy for Sebastian. And so that's how I was able to build that track. So by the time the show was up and running, I had a couple of numbers, and everyone else is like, why aren't you working so hard? Because I wasn't really to just run up and do anything and everything for nothing. I knew eventually my time was going to come, and it did. And it was hard work and high singing for no reason. It was created by Titus Burgess. I don't know if you know Titus Burgess, but he is a famous actor, started from the Broadway world, and sings incredibly high. And so I had to follow in his footsteps.
And you were able to do it.
I was. And he even took a leave of absence. And I remember him coming back to the show, and I go, are you crazy? Like, why would you set the bar so freaking high? He goes, now that I'm back, I realize I made a mistake. And I'm like, yes, you did. But now everyone who sings the new version of Under the Sea has to sing it with this new high section at the end. He created it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't out of self-preservation that he was doing it, thinking like he was one of the only guys that could do it.
Well, he's the one who can do it's a trick in his bag. Like, he knows he can do it. And quite frankly, I didn't... Because I wasn't doing it every night, I didn't really think about the toll it would take. There's Ty. Yeah. The toll it would take until you actually have to now do it 8 times a week. And so it's not just like once, twice, 3 times a lady or a karaoke. This is good times and bad times, sick or not sick.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do it. And it wasn't until he returned, he goes, yeah, I realized that was a problem. I think when you start a Broadway musical, you're going for that Tony. And so for him, why not pull out a trick that he knows he does in his sleep? I don't sing that high.
Yeah.
Unless I have to, but I wouldn't create a role that high because I'm consciously thinking 8 shows a week, 1 day off. The voices and the bodies aren't meant to do that thing that very often, but which is why you'll find people start a show and they leave after a couple of months. Or you have a star come in, TV or movie star, and they can't sustain 8 shows
they kick
a
it off
week.
and then they're... Yeah.
They do 4 shows, 5 shows, and they're out in 3 months. And they go, oh my God, Broadway's so tiring. Try decades and decades of 8 shows a week, 1 day off.
So well, I guess we kind of referred to it as like you've been doing this for 2 decades, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, sure.
I think you're maintaining your youth well. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to get a little bit into the origin story to start, because I think there's a lot of people that don't know how, like, what route do you get into Broadway, and I'm sure there are so many different routes you can go too, because you're in essence you're an actor. You could go down the Hollywood path, you could go down the Broadway path, you could go down. I mean, you could even go to the box. I like.
Oh my!
We were talking about that. I had to drop it.
You had to drop it.
We were talking about them before the podcast. No,
We're going back there already.
Alan did not do anything at the box. I want to make that very clear.
But
so
now I'm kind of curious. I may want to do something at the box.
toss it on the resume, man. That's
Okay, but we did agree that if we do go, that we're all going together.
absolutely
Right.
Yes.
yes.
The next time you're in New York.
All right.
Yeah. So bring us back to young Alan. When did you get first inspired?
I've started out as a singer. I don't know how far I should go into the story because those who are listening were there. I was in the boy group, a la New Edition.
You're talking pop music.
Pop music. I was going to be a vocalist. And we did a show called Putting on the Hits. I don't know if you remember, it's an old reality show way back in the day. And from there, people wanted to know if we can sing, and we actually did sing. Things happened, and my mother was like, yeah, you're not doing that. And so she made me, she didn't want me to go into music, or she didn't want me to go into entertainment outside of her. You go to school, you go to college, and then you decide then you're an adult in her mind. She then moved me from New Jersey to Maryland, and I thought she just threw my career away. And Maryland had a sort of a nice theater community, a very small theater community, not as big as Chicago, but very small and intimate, and I fell in love with acting. And so from there, I realized, okay, I can do this. And actually, I wind up seeing the musical, The Wiz, with Diana Ross, Michael Jackson, Richard Pryor, and realized, I can make a living out of this. This is great. So I went to school. I wound up getting scholarships to go to school for acting and music. I got kicked out of my music program because...
Can we ask why?
Acting wanted you to... With that scholarship, you had to do all of their shows, which included musicals. Beginning music degree, you had to do classical music and not sing anything else. Well... You both are paying me. How do I bridge this gap? I'm not really interested in singing in German I'm just not interested. And then for someone to tell me,
kind of like opera,
correct.
Yeah.
And then you're telling me I have to take a pause. A child, but being young, you don't understand what the benefit of the pause is going to bring me. Right? I just feel like you're stopping me from doing something, and so the quick choice was to go to theater. And then I still didn't really think about Broadway. I saw the movie musical, and then back then you had The Wiz, you had Grease, you had Xanadu, God forbid, but there was something in the popular world that I said, I can sing, but I also love to act. But I wasn't ready to go to New York, and then I decided to go to grad school, but I also loved LA, so I went out to Irvine, University of California at Irvine, figured it would get me to the West Coast, and I can see what that's like. And near the end of my grad school, my last year is when I discovered a friend made me go and audition for Rent. And back then you had to stand in a long line and they would type you out like, yep, you're good. Nope, don't like you. Yep, you're good. So before you even open your mouth.
Oh.
They wanted raw talent. They wanted people. I would take my resume, my school resume, and cut all the things I did in it. And I took a picture of my driver's license and made that my headshot, blew it up at Kinko's as my headshot. Because they wanted raw talent. They wanted someone who doesn't do this per se for Rent. They typed me in. I went and sang with my resume, my blown up driver's license headshot. About 6 auditions is when I wound up getting the job. And I had to ask my school if I could leave. Now my grad school is really like, and especially it's for classical acting, like Shakespeare, Moliere, Ibsen. They wanted acting. So to say I'm going to go do a Broadway musical, they were not really having it. But I kind of explained to them, it's my third year. This is the year you're actually looking for a job. I think we have like workshops and seminars with agents and casting directors. We're meeting all these people, but I now have a job. Why would I sit and wait for another couple of months for you to put me in front of room for people to hire me when someone's hiring me now? And so they said, go ahead, write your dissertation on the road, and you can go. And so that's how I actually started.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and never stopped with musical theater.
So is there a little bit of competition there, like where maybe the more classic theater, like Shakespeare, looks at Broadway as being a lesser art form? Like, and I would imagine Broadway would probably look at that and go like, that's not talent. They're just talking. They're not singing and dancing.
Yes.
Like,
I think each medium and each discipline has their own sort of idea of what's considered better and what's considered worse, or what considers high class and not. But I think the lines are being blurred. It's no different than, we were talking before how back in the day you would never see a movie star on TV. Yeah. TV always wanted to be a movie star. Yeah. You would never see TV people really on Broadway. It usually started, the TV people you're watching came from Broadway, but you would never see them go the other way. And so now the lines are getting blurred. Where I went to school, Shakespeare acting was the pinnacle. That was the top. But the problem was there's no money in it.
Was there ever? No, it's just you got to be passionate as hell for it. That's it.
You have to be passionate.
That's too bad.
But in a way, there's a little security. Back in the day, regional theaters would hire, let's say, 12 people in their company. And if they're doing 8 shows, all 12 people will be in that company. Sometimes you're a principal. Sometimes you're the townsperson ensemble. Sometimes that's how the old school way of doing it. So in a way, you can go to a regional theater in Rochester, New York, and you're employed for 7-8 months out of the year. That's not how we do things anymore. We also will, shows would tour. I'm not going to say regional theater is dead because they've been saying that forever, but going to one spot, only theater in Maryland, for example, they may have 5 shows in their season, but they're not definitely using the same actors anymore. Maybe 2. They may decide you can do this one, and then 3 months later you can come and do another one. But back in the day, they even had a residence where you would live in the old barn that was their sort of housing for actors, and you would do their season. So I feel like Shakespeare, well, I love it. Most of your jobs came out of the Shakespeare festivals, which were in the summer. Yeah. Alabama Shakespeare, Utah Shakespeare, Colorado Shakespeare.
Yeah, the one in Oregon.
Oregon.
Yeah.
They're big.
Yeah, they're big.
And prestigious.
Yeah. But seasonal.
But I cannot pay a mortgage on...
We got to meet a gentleman while we were in New York a couple weeks back, and he was, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he was an opera singer. Yes. And, obviously, he sang a little for us. Beautiful voice. And but he works at a private club. Yes. Because what you're talking about. So he's following his passion. Yes. But he's not able to actually make a true living, at least one that will sustain you living in a place as expensive as New York.
Sure.
And so is that, would you say out of the performing arts overall, include ballet and Broadway, what is the best paying through the gamut of entry level to stardom?
That's a hard one because it also depends on what level you are in it. But I would say clearly movies, TV.
Oh, besides movie and TV, that's because they got all the ads and crap like that.
Sure, but I'm saying, but that's where the money comes from. So
those guys.
When you do ballet and dance companies and opera and theater, that's not necessarily Broadway, not commercial theater. Yeah, that takes theater lovers, opera lovers. Dance concert lovers to support them, donations. So that's a whole nother thing. This is where America fails, and they do not support the arts the way other countries do.
I completely agree with that.
So therefore, you rely on those who love it to support it. So therefore, you can have a wonderful opera singer who has to supplement their income somewhere else just because you can't get at the Met. And when you get at the Met, they're paying someone like, their
Andrea Bocelli
leads.
or something.
I mean, when I heard that Luciano Pavarotti made $1 million a concert, I didn't understand how you can even find that money with the art. Like, I don't, putting my producer hat on, I'm going, how? But some people were making that kind of money. I mean, he clearly was the top, but there's only so many seats in the theater. Of course, there are thousands of dollars of tickets, but how do you pay one person $1 million? Well, when it also comes to, you have a couple of principals under him, and then you have the ensemble, and then you have even extras in opera where you're like, I've only hired you to fill the stage. You're going to wear one costume, and I pay you $35. I'm not here to say which is better, but in that sense, you've given all the money somewhere else, and so therefore some of these people can't make a living and consistently, and that's a little sad. But I feel like the United States does not fund their arts as they should, and to me, artistry is around us everywhere. You cannot, if you like sports, you like art. Someone designed those costumes, that stadium, the colors, everything you see has an artist. Either that's an architect or a scenic designer, everywhere there is art. And so I feel like it's mainly in Europe they understand that. Here in the States, it's a little harder to get people who think, well, I don't like going to see the theater, so I don't like art. Yeah, but when you take your wife on a vacation, or when you take your husband, or wherever you go, or whatever you see has an artist touching it somehow. This is artistry, how you make what you make. And so even when you go, I want to sit back and drink some wine or drink a beer, they were artisans still crafting that together to figure out what's the best thing for you, and you take it for granted. And that's the sad thing for me about watching Americans who go, I don't need art in my life. Of course you do.
So I agree with all that, and we see that even in our business where it's more of there's a trade out for easy access, and it's much more consumer focused than it is about the history and the process behind whatever the product is, whether it's art or wine or textiles, whatever. So I do think that we're missing something here. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, we don't do it. I mean, we got to go to what the Nutcracker was like my first, when I was a kid. That was a field trip where we got to go to San Francisco, go to the Nutcracker, and like if you don't like the Nutcracker, I don't care if you don't like ballet or whatever, it's still something amazing to see.
Yes.
I mean, it's, so I think maybe we just don't have that opening up, but I also feel like post-COVID, there's a little bit of kind of a return to the live, I'll call it live entertainment, where you want that reality. You want that, I mean, even stand-up comedy, whatever it is, like you're starting to see these movements and that are actually taking people out of this whole like, I'm going to, sit in front of a TV. I want the experience along with the entertainment.
Yes.
It's not just that show and popcorn. It's like, I want to be part of that scene.
Yeah.
I hope it does happen. And if that elevates, then dollars will elevate, and then maybe people can look at it like, hey, I can make a living doing this,
I agree with you. I just don't want them to separate what they're still seeing. It's still artistry. Do you know what I'm saying? There are people who go, but I don't go anywhere to see anything. I sit at home, watch TV, I pop a beer, and I cook something up on the grill. That grill was designed by an artist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think also like they're
teaching people that everything is developed from art, culture.
Even if it's this is what the masses are buying, still was designed by someone. Do you see what I mean? So you don't just pick up a pen and go, well, I'm just writing. This was still developed. So there's nothing when your wife wants you to pick out furniture. So it becomes maddening when I watch people can literally be all around art but separated. I don't need that stuff. I don't need to send my kid to go see the Nutcracker. All these little things. Of course, they may not be a ballet dancer, but they begin to open their mind to experience things that they would never experience before. And we still need these younger generations to do the very same things that we enjoy. Everything
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no.
But I am
Yeah.
curious. What do you think is missing from? Is it a public school system thing? A lack of the arts? I mean, I could talk about with just my kids.
Mm-hmm.
We were expected to be in something, whether it was theater, band,
Those
choir,
extracurriculars. Yeah.
and it was like that. And now they don't.
They're gone.
They don't have those.
Yeah.
And the music piece to me, just like it's such a foundational component to like just learn what a beat means. Start with that, and the fact that like, I mean, my kids can't dance.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a good dancer, but I can
But-
be on beat at
Right?
least.
I've seen you dance though. I mean, that doesn't stop you. You know what I mean? You're in your own. You got your own rhythm.
Look, if I'm
going.
on beat, I guess
Yeah.
I'm doing all right. But
Yes.
yeah, I'm not pulling out the moves.
You're out there. You showed up.
I'm out there,
That's
that's it.
what I like about it. You don't give up.
But I do think that those little losses do have a compounding effect on the loss of culture.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I do agree, Europe has really maintained theirs. They've done a good job of
Agreed. When one of our biggest exports is entertainment, it drives me up a wall that we don't fund it enough.
that. Yeah.
It's one of our biggest exports, but we don't. If we don't think of it that way, we're like, I don't care if we cut out band or music, or even some of our sports, which teach people sportsmanship and how to work together as a team, things they will be doing in the corporate boardroom. When we start cutting these things out that we grew up on, so what happens when all of it falls apart?
Yeah.
And you can't thread the needle. You can't figure out how you got here. Well, you got here because someone took you to the zoo on a field trip, took you to a museum that you probably weren't paying attention to, but they still took you to it. You know what I mean? You had baseball and t-ball and football and field hockey. You had marching bands, things that you may not have paid attention to, but they still affect, to me, your life.
Oh yeah, we've talked about the experience of osmosis. You know, learning through.
Oh, totally.
Through that, just like
Best
being there
way.
in the experience. So that's a great point. And I was also going to say there's a whole other aspect of it too, which I think we talked about before, is that, you just finished being the lead on Amazing Show, The Wiz, and when you're at that role and you've been performing, you finish your show, there's no guarantee so much that you're going to have another lead role, right? Because there's like this sense of, which I guess in film and TV it's being typecasted, but I'm guessing still here in theater world too, it's you've been this character for so long, you've embraced it, you've lived it, everyone has loved it, and then to try to transition to another role, but to hear your story too, which I can't wait to keep hearing your origin and all the other roles you have. You have been able to do that, I think.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because the people who tell you what you can do are the people who are deciding what you are able to do. They don't. In this world of social media where they see you as one thing, it's kind of hard to see you as something else, especially if they weren't alive or even paying attention or aware at that time. And so you're constantly trying to make someone aware of what you can do. And that's until you become to the point where you, even when you become a star, though, unless you're putting your own money into projects, people always assume that, well, this is what you do. Do you know what I mean?
So pigeonhole you.
They pigeonhole you
Yeah.
all the time. But I think that's everywhere. So I don't want to make it seem like, bring out the violence and say, woe is me. I think I'm really happy with my career. Of course, there's a trajectory that I want to move in, but I can't blame anyone else but myself, if that makes sense. We all are dealing with today in the social media world and how we move forward and how people pigeonhole you. But that's not what was me. That's where everyone else is too, if that makes sense.
Well, and seeing the next generation come up, and we did get to talk about this, but
Yeah.
I definitely want to get into it. It's because we see it everywhere. It's not just one segment of society, but this different mentality when it comes to your origin story. You're talking about some of the things I heard. If we were to summarize, it's that you showed up, you took the opportunities,
Yes.
and you worked. You got it done, and you were able to build yourself a life and a future still that you can still grow beyond because you showed up and you didn't make excuses. And the excuses, maybe we call it the excuse generation. Like they've always got some bullshit that they come up with that they're like. So how are you seeing? I guess we do have to go back to the origin story, but
Sure.
how are you seeing this?
We'll get there.
But this
He's like, he's hearing that.
But this is such a juicy thing, man. I love hearing different perspectives on this. So, what are you seeing in the world of Broadway when it comes to these, the younger generation coming in, and what challenges do you have with them in putting a production together?
I'll put it this way. For me, and for most people in my generation, and we're only 27 years old, the sayings of the show always must go on, like saying yes, being present, taking the opportunities as they come to you, and you better be prepared and ready. I feel like this generation doesn't think of them the same way. But what I will say is, watching my own journey, I said yes to everything when I was younger because I call myself young and dumb. But I was able to do some amazing things with some amazing people by saying that. But then as I got older, real life starts happening.
Yeah.
And you begin to go, can't do that. You can't do that. So the moral of the story is, while you're young, you probably should be saying yes a lot more than you are, rather than putting up these roadblocks. Because when you get older and responsibilities start falling upon you, children, houses, spouses, you may not have the luxury to say yes even if you wanted to. And therefore you find yourself in a situation where you can't move as forward or as fast as you wanted to. But if you look behind you, what you were saying no to a lot of things. You put up a lot of roadblocks and for a lot of things. One of my biggest pet peeves now, and it sort of came out of this project, is I feel unsafe. I need a lot of people to unpack that word, because that can mean so many other things. And for me and the Wiz, that was something that a lot of our company members were saying, and I love them all, but it meant different things to different people. And
so you're talking, these are 18, 19 to 25?
I wish they were.
Oh, even older than that.
These are there's early 20s, mid 20s,
okay,
and sometimes early 30s.
But they're using the word "I feel unsafe." Like they have a forum and they all talk about what like cool terms they're going to use to try to get out of a job.
Well, to get out of a job, or to not fulfill their job,
there you go.
Or
That's
to
yeah.
The vocabulary word doesn't stop the world from turning. The vocabulary word doesn't ease the stage fright or fear. You got to get out and do it, especially in our business. People have crushing stage fright. Some of the most famous people. Barbra Streisand cannot. She's gotten older and now it's gotten to her where I have enough money. I don't have to go out and do a live concert. Michael Jackson had this issue.
Yeah.
Whitney Houston had this issue.
Jerry Garcia.
There's just so many people. But it's usually when they get older where they're like, okay, I have this, I have that, I don't need that anymore. Not the same way I needed it before. When I was younger, I was able to sort of swallow it and move forward. What concerns me about the new generation that's constantly saying I feel safe or put roadblocks, you're making me feel like an idiot, or I'm sorry you feel that way. But unless you tell me something that I really need to be attuned to, no, I'm gonna push you out like the mama bird and go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it. And some of these things I wish we can tell some of the parents, which is very difficult, is that it's okay for your child to be disappointed, especially if they want to go in the entertainment business. It is okay. Actually, it might be more helpful when they're going up for that, 5th grade musical, spring musical, and then they don't get the lead, to see how they deal with the disappointment and how you pick yourself back up and move forward. Because I find that when they get one disappointment in their mid-20s, it becomes debilitating. And now they need village, and not that it shouldn't take a village to uplift you, but not for certain things. Certain things I feel like you should not. I don't want to judge anyone that way because it depends on what they're going through. But some things you can actually handle within if you've had experience with it.
Starting at young is where it needs to start. Those little bits of rejection, getting accustomed to that emotion, I think is something that, yeah, I agree.
And how one processes it, right? So if you need to go talk to mom or dad or your best friend, then you realize the next time it happens, you can talk to these people, and that doesn't work, then maybe you can go somewhere else. But if you don't have that into your mid-20s, not to the level in which you're having it now we're having a problem. So now you may have your own kids to have to manage, and you're still having this issue, and it becomes overwhelming because you didn't have these disappointments when you were younger.
Yeah, it's like that's what builds you and how it helps you evolve, is going through those experiences. And I think like you're actually a great example of that, because for some reason, as like I was hearing this, I'm just thinking about, I know Kinky Boots was a big milestone for you, and it sounds like you overcame. There was some things that you had to overcome, things that you didn't expect it. I didn't know if you wanted to kind of go into that, but I feel like this kind of relates, because I feel that's now look at where you're at now, and that you kept saying yes, or trying to figure out how to overcome those obstacles, because life doesn't go your way all the time, and if you're kind of babied, or you're always just kind of feeling like that you're always unsafe. I mean, kind of life is unsafe in a sense. So there is a tap, and I get what you're saying. People are going through different things, but but to be able just to kind of have that perception that this is going to help you grow and adapt to those things.
It builds character, right?
Yeah. I would like to say yes to everything. I can't now, but I did when I was younger as well.
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets. And I can tell you, if I said no to a lot of stuff, I'd look back and go, God damn, I missed a lot of opportunities.
Yes.
And I think that's the risk that we're seeing with the younger generation right now, is they're going to be 40 years old, and then they're going to be tied down, and they're going to be like, shit, I could have been something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're watching it as they're making decisions.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not anyone's parent. I am only their friend looking on the sidelines going, that could have been a big opportunity for you. What is happening? Even as we're building the show, I knew it was going to, once it hits Broadway, it's going to go on tour. I remember saying to one of our dance captains, you'll be putting this show up. This is how this works. You take this dance captain job now, and you do a great job. People will be calling you to, hi, I need you to go set this up. And then we would having you travel with the show as just the dance captain, because the director may be busy, the choreographer is busy, they have other projects they're doing. I'm calling you.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
And that was that Kinky Boots?
No, this was The Wiz.
That was for The Wiz, okay.
Just use an example of just an actress who I was trying to let her know, foreshadowing, you can have a job for a very, very long time. You can also still do your Broadway musicals. But they're like, hey, I'm going to need you in Colorado next week to go set up, bring in 2 new people. Like, this would be your thing where you're sort of the pseudo director. They weren't hearing me and eventually burnt out. And again, someone young didn't quite hear it the same way as I think I was trying to tell them. So therefore you kind of go, I got to use my own advice. Well, you got to crash and burn on your own to figure out. But this is an opportunity that you missed because you didn't want to say yes at the right moment or the right time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Or just take that leap. I mean, that's where I always tell people, like what I've seen in my life, where people will overanalyze something and wait until they know it's a sure thing, but usually by the time they know it's a sure thing, the opportunity is passed, and now they're a follower, not a leader.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a mix of kind of like the gut feel is still a real thing.
Yes.
Like, I think I could, maybe 75% of my skill could do that.
Yeah.
And I'll figure out the other 25.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's like 60%, I think if you're over 50, just fucking do it.
Yeah.
and if you're driven to do it, you're going to achieve it. And
Sure.
that's one thing I think that I mean, I saw that even in my generation when I was younger. But if you don't jump in and just try it, you're never even going to know what the potential is.
Yeah, for me, I've done some crazy stuff on dares. I'll use the rent situation when I went to work for Luciano Pavarotti as an example. Yeah. We're closing the show in San Francisco, Rent. We're at the Golden Gate Theater, and it's run its course, but it's still on Broadway. And we hear that Luciano Pavarotti, who did La Boheme, wants to take Rent, a duplication of Rent, to Italy. Since his first project was pretty much La Boheme, which is the same story. So on the closing night, my best friend said we should ask Michael Greif, the director, if we can, who's actually directing Alicia Keys' musical right now, probably. Alicia! Anyway. She said we should ask Michael Greif if we can go to Italy and help him put up this show, since we both are like swings in the show. And a swing is someone who learns 5 to 7 to 8 roles.
Wow.
So they're not just an understudy. So I can go on for a principal, but I also know pretty much everyone's job. So all the men I learned, all the females she learned. And she just did this on a bet. And I said, okay, let's do it. You downed a couple of drinks to just get the liquid courage to go. And I said, hey, Michael, look, I hear you're doing a show in Italy. I would like to help you if I can, so just let me know. And he just sort of laughed it off like, okay, these kids. And 2 months later, I got a phone call. Saying, hi, Luciano would like to meet you because we're looking for a choreographer to do the show. Well, I know the choreography. I'm not a choreographer, but I know the choreography because I know all the male roles. So I met with them. They came to see the show for the day on Broadway. I wasn't even in the Broadway show yet. So I just came from my house. I met them and they're like, hey, so we don't have a lot of black people in Italy who can sing. Like, would you be willing to play Collins? And I'm like, of course. So they're like, so it's going to be like 7 months of just rehearsing, which normally is 4, 5, 6 weeks. Yeah. 7 months in Italy. I'm sorry, I'm doing this thing.
Wait, why did they need 7? Why did they push to 7 months?
So Italy has a history of classical singing, not musical theater.
Ah, okay.
So kind of the things, if you're not singing pop songs and musical theater in schools, everyone's singing like Pavarotti.
Yeah.
They're singing classical. They are known for doing dynamite opera. Mm-hmm. So therefore those kids know how to sing dynamite opera. But when I want you to sing rock tunes and to fall off a note or to even squeak a note, that was not their thing. So it was going to take that long to sort of find the raw talent, but then sort of beat into them musical theater, but not even musical theater, rock musical theater. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some of those auditions, my goodness, I can't even explain to you having someone sing songs that you know to be rock, but they can't get out the classical. Like, I can't even explain that. It was just so bizarre. It's kind of like hearing someone hear a pop tune today, but Luciano trying to sing it. It just becomes, this is just not feel right. And you try not to do that in front of someone's face, but you're just like, this is not quite right. But anyway.
So if you turn Michael Jackson into kind of like Queen.
But see, Michael Jackson would make, that may be different. That may work.
But but Queen executed it. That was like Queen did a beautiful job of merging not really pop, like rock and classical elements.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury was solid.
He was.
Yeah.
He was.
I just don't know but I
but those are too close enough. Do you know like there's a song, One Song Glory Before I Go, something like that. They would go, one song, glory, before I go. Like, it was just so, they couldn't bring it down. It's part of their training. It's inbred in them. And so someone can look the part, and then we go, okay, I like you, or I like both. I like two of you that are pretty much, but you can't reduce it to its essence. You have to hold out every note. That's not what we're asking.
Yeah.
And so they can't quite understand that because they were taught a certain way. So now you're working with two people and trying to give them the time to sort of hear our soundtrack over and over again. Eventually, it was working. Like, they got it, but it's hard to beat out, or it's hard to teach someone something that they have already have so ingrained in them that you can't fault them. So it was smart that she took 7 months to rehearse, and it really needed it.
Yeah.
So I fly over, meeting everyone. Of course, for them, they like to do their soundtrack before, because she has part of our musical team is a famous music producer there. So just so you know, Luciano is like, I call him king of Italy. Like, I didn't realize how humongous he's there. Like, military tanks on his property, full on.
Really?
Oh, no lie.
Like, he's like a king.
Parked in. If this is the gate,
Like
you
for
have
security.
All I'm saying, there were 2 tanks.
Holy crap!
You don't ask questions,
He
right?
got tanks, dude.
Yeah, man.
And you're like, what's? And then,
So he's a national treasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
One
Wow.
tank you could just take over like
I'm
Napa
just saying.
Valley.
Yeah, that's all you need.
And it has a whole team around him that you don't quite know is around him until weird moments. But we'll get to that. So I fly to Italy. We're recording the soundtrack, and I realized that the director, who's supposed to sort of be working with these actors, is not really doing much. And so me, being stupid and young, I went to Luciano's wife and said, hey, you pay me $10,000, I'll direct this whole thing. And she's like, okay, so you're going to direct, be in it, sing it in Italian, and choreograph it.
Sounds like a small
No,
ask.
but I gotta throw this in there though too.
Jeez.
Alan, did you speak Italian before this?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
Absolutely not. So now they're taking me to language classes 2 hours in the day and then spending the rest of the evening rehearsing. And if you know anything, you're Italian, so you know you take a break. It's not just, you just don't take a 15-minute break. Your lunch break is an hour, 2 hours.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Dinner starts at 9, 10, 11 p.m.
Yeah.
You're rehearsing all day, so we could be done at midnight, and I still get up at 8 in the morning to go to my language classes to learn my Italian, or at least learn how to say things phonetically, and then started directing the musical. So the real director, Michael Greif, was going to fly in 2 weeks before we opened the show, and that allowed me to stop directing and now just be a full-time actor to have the language come out of my mouth and me now singing in a new language. Now, I mentioned I got I dropped my music major because I refused to stop singing.
Yeah.
At least in our classes, we were learning how to sing in German. So I knew how to sing phonetically in another language and not understand anything I'm saying, right? This time it was different because I knew all the words in English, so I knew what I was saying. Now I just needed to make it sound right. So by doing that, the director comes in, he realizes I'm doing a good job. We run for maybe 2 months. When we open, it's going well. We record a soundtrack, it's going well. And then to reward me, he gave me my first Broadway debut as Tom Collins in Rent after that experience.
Back in New York. Oh. So yeah, you earned your stripes then.
Right.
That was like your breakout.
I not only got to work with a legend,
Yeah.
I now got my Broadway debut by first on a dare, but then saying yes to something that was not in the cards for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then my opening on Broadway, there was not much of a rehearsal because I'm flying in from Italy. Maybe a couple of days, but when we say days, it really means a few hours because you can't rehearse actors who are performing every day. You can't rehearse them 8 hours and then have them do a 2.5 hour show. So we're talking like 2 hours here, 2 hours there, and now you're on. My opening night, I'm singing I'll Cover You. And it goes, live in my house, I'll be your shelter. And we're all on the line. I start singing, Vivi con me.
I was going to ask.
Di te avrò cura. And all of a sudden, everyone starts looking at me, and I'm singing, Mi pagherai solamente di baci. Oh, shit. So even my first time, I should be making an impression on my director and thanking him I'm singing in the wrong language. And of course, there we have super fans who are in the front rows, people who used to sleep out on the sidewalks to get tickets for the first row are like, their expression, they have wonderful expressions, but they're like, what are you doing? And I'm not paying attention to anyone. I'm in my zone. And I turn around and realize I am singing in the wrong language. I should have been fired. I should have been fired.
But he gave you another chance.
Gave me another chance. I've been with that project. I wound up doing that for almost 4 years. I would leave the show. At one point, I got mad at The Lion King, and I was like, screw you.
Hi, Rent. So do you need me? Oh yeah, Alan, come on back. Like it was one of those jobs where for me, that was my job in between shows. I could always call them. They would always need me because their show was run for so long.
Yeah, I was going to ask how long it ran for.
I want to say over 10 years, maybe 12.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I know between gigs, I could call them. They have all your costumes. They never really get rid of them. They just put them in storage, and when you're ready to come back, when they have a space for you. But also, it was a good thing that I learned. I knew all the roles, all the men roles. So it was like, of course, if you need me, yeah, we can only use you for 3 months. Well, that's great because I only need to be there for 2. So you know what I mean. So it worked out.
And in Broadway, that's common where like they're gonna swap people in and out based on whatever you got coming up, you're filling right now, and like so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you normally have everyone in their contract, but the thing is, life happens. Someone twists their ankle, someone's going through surgery, someone's having a baby, so those main people still have their jobs. Or you have people I get 2 weeks vacation. And now you have a company of 20 people who need 2-week vacation. So you still have to begin to navigate that, right? And so then you start hiring vacation swings. The great thing about shows like Wicked and Lion King, they have decades worth of people who've worked there before. Matter of fact, I have people on the Broadway Lion King that have been in the show since I was in the show, which was 2 years ago.
Did you hear that?
But like who've been there for a very, very long time, and that's just that's what they do, and there's no shame in their game. They're making their money doing the thing they love, and so I admire them for that.
So The Wiz is going good.
Wiz is going good. We did close on Broadway. I did try to produce it. Actually, I told our mutual friend Alex.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was really very, very helpful in sort of getting me to. I needed to raise a couple of $1 million to move the show to another theater. But in doing that, I realized our season was full and we couldn't find a theater home, so then I had to let it go, which was sad. But it got those juices running back in me. If that makes sense. Yeah.
And what is your current like? What would you recommend if somebody's going to New York right now on Broadway?
Is this really the end? Unbelievable. Find out next week